Good morning, everyone. This is Meeta, Sahni, and I'm here with Tosh Polpitiye. Hi, Tosh.
Hi, Meeta. How you doing? Morning.
Yeah, good, thank you. It's Sunday morning, and I just wanted to say hello to everyone that attended our session on Friday, the 27th of March. That was the Q&A session on business hysteria, and the first of 4 sessions that Tosh and I are doing over the coming month. It was a very popular session. The webinar had a lot of questions, and as promised, we wanted to come back to you all and make sure we get the answers, give you the answers that you are so searching for right now. So, Tosh, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, look, Meeta and I decided to do this to really help lots of business owners kind of filter down the huge amount of information that is out there to the things that kind of matter to help you make some decisions. Now, we didn't get everything dealt with in that live Q&A session, but it was really popular. I think a lot of people found it really helpful, got tremendously good feedback. And what we promised was we would do this follow-up video, basically answering everything.
Yeah, the main topic was furloughing, wasn't it? That furloughing.
Yeah, that's right. We have 3 topics. Yeah.
So actually what I've done here, Tosh, is I've just put all the comments from the chat that were happening in live time on Friday. Right. But so we're going to have comments other than questions. But for you all, please join us. And shall we get straight into the questions, Tosh?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Brilliant. Okay, let's do this. Okay, so... Right, hopefully we can see some of the comments and questions on the screen.
Showing my age now, aren't I?
Don't worry, I'm there.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, fantastic. So it mentions a gift, Tosh. I know that you put some gifts out there, and we both did. We just recap what you put out there.
Well, there were 2 free things that we're offering, courtesy of Daniel Barnett, one of the leading employment law barristers in the UK. Yeah. One of them was a furlough agreement, which is what is a requirement now if you want to furlough employees, which is what we discussed in one of our topics. And the second thing was a home working policy. Again, really, really current, and again, just to be really helpful.
Yeah. And then what I added to that was the free link to personality profiling, because as we all know, when people are working remotely, it's really important for morale, for culture, and for business effectiveness to understand your people and make sure you're managing them right. So that will, all 3 links will be attached to this post, so please use them and please let us know how they went for you. Okay, so I'm going to ask you the first question, which is around the tax position of the furloughing. So the question is, well, it's a statement with a question mark. I assume that 80% is taxable.
The answer is yes.
Okay.
Effectively, what it is that employers are required to pay an employee salary up to 80%, but they're supposed to pay their employee salary, and they can claim back 80% from the government under the coronavirus job retention scheme. So the tax has already been paid out. So yes, it does include it. It is taxable, is the answer.
So yeah, so from an employee perspective, they will get the net amount of £2,500, and from the employer's perspective, they will get £2,500 towards gross salary and employer's NIC.
Correct. The cap is 80% of salary or £2.5 grand, whichever is reached first.
Yeah, and obviously being a business owner myself, and you know, reflecting some of the questions there, some companies will decide to top up, some organizations will decide to top up above that 2,500, but it's not government policy, is it, that they have to?
No, it's a complete choice. The key first thing to do is make them a furloughed employee, which we discussed sort of during our Q&A session, which is about giving them an agreement, expressly agreeing that they are now a furloughed employee rather than just a normal employee. And there's certain criteria for that. Once they meet that eligibility and everybody's clear that's what they're going to be, well, then they pay those and they can claim back 80%.
Perfect, thank you. And also we had a question here around, to be clear, it doesn't need to be employees that you would be making redundant. It is just that there is no work for them to currently do. So yeah, that again is almost like the criteria of who could be furloughed. Can you just clarify that for us?
Actually, Meeta, you missed a question there. It says, can an employer reduce staff days to 2.5 days?
I did.
A week and still claim 80%? I think you know this one.
I can actually answer that question. Yeah. So, no, an employer can't reduce anyone down to 2.5 days and then claim the 80%. It very much is an all or nothing, where if there's no work for them to do, they can be furloughed. And if there is some work for them to do and you negotiated 2.5 days, that you would have to pay them from your own wage bill.
Are you going for my job, Meeta? That's exactly right.
You're a good teacher.
Which leads us on to your actual what is the furloughed employee? Because people I think they're overthinking it. So the bottom line is a furloughed. I'm sorry, say again. I think it was a slight delay. Say again.
I'm going to say in business at the moment, I think a lot of business leaders, a lot of HR professionals are sitting with a lot of questions. So the thinking definitely is on, strong. So this is really helping clarify.
So the key thing to remember is if the furloughed employee is an employee who has got no work to do and they are sitting at home, it's an alternative scheme to be made redundant. So rather than being made redundant, so if you've got something for them to do, or they're going to do some work, put it that way, then they are not furloughed. If they're not doing any work and the alternative would be that they'd be made redundant, then they can be made a furloughed employee. Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you. So just moving, I'm going to move in order now because you're keeping an eye on me in these questions. Actually, you have answered that one, and you've also answered the question around what is the criteria for a member of staff to be furloughed. So that's good. Right. The next question is, what about a temp on a fixed term contract whose contract is coming to an end and they cannot be extended and considered as furloughed?
So we addressed this actually during the Q&A. So the issue is they have to be still employed by the company. So if the situation is that the fixed term contract comes to an end, and it depends what the circumstances are, maybe it's the end of a specific contract or a specific event or a time frame or whatever it is, and it would come to an end anyway, well, then that won't be a furlough entitlement because then their contract will come to an end regardless of the current coronavirus crisis.
Yeah.
However, it's been going on for a number of years, and they're extending that, and it's not really fixed term, but they just kept on renewing it.
Like a rolling
a different matter.
So if it was a rolling contract, then they could be furloughed.
That's exactly right.
Perfect. Thank you. And then there's a question here about contractors through umbrella companies. So this doesn't apply to them because they were employed. Is that right?
Correct. I mean, there is a scheme now for self-employed.
Yes.
The government made that announcement. It's kind of on all fours with the employee scheme, in terms of they will give up to 80% of earnings for people that are earning up to £50,000 a year. Okay. But slightly different with the self-employed, and we're not going to go into that too much at this point, is that they're allowed to work during that period.
Yeah. We may talk about this more in another one of our sessions, perhaps.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Thank you. So that's about contractors. Now this is about directors. So this says, can a director-only employee be furloughed if the company has no income, but it's still being controlled? And I think you covered that as well, didn't you?
We did. We talked about that. The issue is this: there's no work for that person to do. I don't understand how a director, maybe if it's a small business, two directors, co-directors, maybe it's a married couple, maybe one of them is not working as much. But if there's at least one director normally is doing the work, so because they're keeping the company afloat. So if there's work to do and they're doing anything, picking up a phone call to do with work or anything that might generate work or revenue, well, then they won't be furloughed. So the test, keep it real simple. Are you an employee in law? Are you on the PAYE scheme? And secondly, are you doing any work? Is there work for you to do? As an alternative to being made redundant, you can be furloughed under the retention scheme.
Perfect. Now, there's another question. The next question is from a payroll administrator who has clients who they are processing payroll for. They're asking, how do they process this scheme for them? We don't have all the details on that yet, do we?
No. I was really feeling a bit confident on Friday, thinking that the scheme with the online portal might be even up this coming week. But looking into it more and more, we're looking at the end of the month of April. For the portal to be up and running, and then for them to make payments out during the following month, I presume.
Right. Okay. So let's do this. Let's make sure we add that to our updates as we're going on our sessions as well, because I know everyone is keen to understand how we process it, but also for businesses, how we are going to get that money back into the organisation.
My advice would be you just do business as usual. If you can afford to pay your staff, you pay them as usual. You make the application when the portal becomes available. Whatever is required will obviously be set out in there, and then you will reclaim that money back. If it then becomes a situation where you're not eligible or whatever other reason the business is not going to be able to continue in the way that they're going, well, then you'll be looking at redundancies or business closures or whatever other alternatives might be available. I suspect that if we're still in this problematic situation, that the chance is going to extend it, because otherwise the whole thing's just going to fall to bits, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now a question at the bottom of the page. What about employees who are currently working their notice period, i.e. they voluntarily resigned before the pandemic? Are they still eligible to receive furlough?
No, The key issue is if they've left for, what is the primary reason that they are not working? If the primary reason is that they have resigned, then no. There is a scenario where if they've, if they've been made redundant or something after the 28th of February, they could be brought back in. But in circumstances where this is not the primary reason, no, they're not eligible.
So we've got a couple of questions around holiday now. Can you insist people take holiday while they're furloughed? And furthermore, is annual holiday accrued at the contractual rate whilst furloughed? And then there's a third one about holiday. What's happening to accrue it? So same thing. So
they do continue to accrue it. It is at the full rate.
Okay.
The reimbursement may only be 80% if they're furloughed during that period. But the reality is, can you force them to take holiday? You can force them in any way that you could in any other circumstances, which is you can't really, unless you're running out of the holiday leave year. You can ask people to take it, use it or lose it, or you can do by agreement. Maybe the agreement would be they would receive full pay during that period of time as an incentive to take their holiday leave. But all the same contractual and statutory provisions still apply, which is you need to use it within the holiday year. You can't necessarily force people to take it.
Okay. So I'm going to jump over questions that you've already answered. So there's one around the portal, so we know about that. Hopefully more information to come.
Month.
One of the questions was around new hires. So this is key because before the crisis really took hold, companies and organizations had plans to hire. What happens to those people? Can they be furloughed? Can they be brought on as planned and then furloughed?
So actually, some of the people that attended the Q&A session also knew the answer to this when they questioned. I said I was uncertain at that time. And having looked into it now, if they haven't been employed from the 28th of February onwards, the answer is no.
So even though they may have signed a contract with an agreed start date, perhaps for the 1st of April.
Correct.
They can't be furloughed.
Correct. They've got to be employed from the 28th of February 2020 onwards.
All right. Thank you. That is clear as day now. Thank you. Okie doke. If an employer offers staff voluntary furlough, what evidence would HMRC want to see in terms of evidence that these are redundancies? So again, we don't know yet, do we, on that one, Tosh?
So that question's a bit mixed up. So it says, if an employer offers staff voluntary furlough, what evidence would the HMRC want to see in terms of evidence that they are redundancies? Well, they're not looking for redundancies. They're looking for evidence that they're furloughed employees, I suppose. Yeah. So there's two things that will achieve that. Number one is a furlough agreement, which we're offering as part of this process anyway, part of these live webinars and even this recorded video that we're doing for you all. So that's step number one. Agree it with the staff and give it to them. If they're not agreeing to be furloughed, then obviously part of the communications that you need to have with them or consultations that you'll need to have with them is about being made redundant. Yeah. Remember, the only reason we're furloughing them is as an alternative scheme as an alternative to being made redundant. Yeah, the government have put this scheme in place to stop redundancies. That's it. To keep people protected and get some level of income. It's a great scheme. I know we can sit there picking holes in it all day, but for what in the time frame that they've done, I think it's fantastic. The issue is how that's going to work in practice. And again, I know people are looking to us as experts. Yeah, we don't know yet because we haven't actually got the scheme in place. But but we're getting there bit by bit. We're getting more and more information.
We wait and see, and we keep our audience updated as we find out.
So the key answer to that question is get a furlough agreement to begin with, and then you'll be able to show that it's redundancy if necessary, because I'm assuming it's a genuine redundancy situation.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So the next question is around flexi hours. Does the government assistance apply to people working flexi hours? If so, does it work on the average over 3 months?
So it's working actually on the average over the last 12 months is what they're looking at doing. Right. Obviously, if people have got less than 12 months, then they'll just take a view and look at what the average hours are.
Yeah.
That's the general guidance at the moment.
Okay. And this is a really good question on the next page now, and something I was thinking about as well. People are being furloughed because there isn't any work, but, we're looking at 3 months here or thereabouts. What if they're furloughed because there isn't any work, and then from, work comes in and there is work? Can they be unfurloughed?
The information suggests yes. Suggests that. We don't know unequivocally. The minimum period for a furloughed employee is 3 weeks.
Okay. Now,
sorry, Meeta, you go ahead.
Yeah, so 3 weeks is a minimum that somebody has to be furloughed.
Correct.
And after that, we can unfurlough them.
So yeah, in theory, if it's the minimum period, that means after that there could be work that comes up.
Yeah.
And then you pay them full pay in the normal way, and then you'll presumably confirm that their contractual terms will resume for whatever period, whether that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, and then they may be furloughed again.
Yeah.
As an alternative to redundancy. The difficulty is if it's a redundancy situation, it should be a redundancy situation which is for a certain period. But I suppose if people have bits and pieces to do, they might want to look at furloughing and then unfurloughing them, as the case may be.
Okay. I did hijack that question a little bit because actually the question was, can you furlough an employee for a few weeks, claim the 80 for that period, then decide to make them redundant anyway?
Yes.
Fine. Thank you. Okay. The next is around annual leave, which we've covered. We also covered about collective consultancy because furloughing is not redundancy, so there doesn't have to be any sort of consultancy.
Or an alternative, yes. The normal redundancy, unfair dismissal rules apply, obviously. My answer was very quick on the earlier question, but it's obviously subject to the rules that apply, which means a fair selection criteria, meaningful consultation periods, depending on how many people there are, looking at suitable alternatives. Redundancy has to be the last reasonable resort. That's the key.
Yeah, understood.
To be fair in law, I mean. Yeah.
So I think this question was, if we're furloughing, does it have to be some sort of consultation? And the answer is no.
Correct.
If we're making somebody redundant after that, then yes, the same redundancy rules apply as statutory standard rules.
Correct. So depending on the number of employees that are potentially being made redundant, that will determine what the consultation period will or won't be, whether it's 30 days, 45 days or less.
Yeah, I think it might be worth us maybe spending some time in the next couple of sessions on that as well, because furloughing and redundancy kind of go hand in hand, don't they? People
correct.
Around both, trying to get the clarity. Okie doke, let's have a little look down this list. What happens? What happens if the employer decides not to apply for the 80% scheme, just closes the doors, and then do the employees have any rights? I think you did answer this at the Q&A, actually. Just give us a quick synopsis.
Yep, so basically it depends what close the doors means. If close the doors means we are completely shutting down the business, well, there's no business, there's no employees, full stop. Then you're looking at normal redundancy processes in the usual way. If the company have no money to pay out redundancies, then employers will be looking at any government schemes that are available to be able to pay those redundancies, right?
Yeah.
If closing the doors just means we're keeping the business running, but we're keeping people on standby, then you keep them on. There's no reason not to have them as furloughed employees.
Yeah.
And given that the law says if you've got more than 2 years service, you have the right to claim unfair dismissal. And as part of that process, if redundancy has to be the last reasonable resort, I think it would be difficult for employers to say that it was reasonable not to explore the furlough process, given that will protect employees.
Yeah, got you. Okay, so I've just skipped over a few comments that were at the bottom of the last page. And now there's a question here, which I don't think we looked at in the session. What happens if an employer says someone has to go to work as the employer says it's a key job when it isn't?
Well, I think there's certain criteria on whether they are key workers or not.
Yeah.
And an employer can't really just make it up.
What would happen if they asked somebody to come in?
Say again?
What would happen if they did that? What would the ramifications be?
Well, strictly speaking, the employee could refuse to go to work if the circumstances were justified, right? There's different circumstances where an employee, at the moment, the government is saying, just don't go into work if you can avoid it. But it's not law. Yeah. So strictly speaking, employers could say, well, we want you to come in. The circumstances have to be, well, what is the situation where the employee is staying at home? Well, employees staying at home to be paid would be on sick leave, would be on holiday leave, or where they're ready, willing, and able, and the company have no work to be able to give them. So if there's work to do and they are volunteering to stay at home, albeit in accordance with government guidelines, strictly speaking, at the moment, the law will say that they don't have to pay them. I'm pretty sure that's going to change soon. They have to put something in place because obviously there's a complete conflict between what the law is saying and what government are advising in the current circumstances.
Yeah, very much so. It's a relocation rather than not paying salary. That's what businesses and not-for-profit organisations understand. So yes. It would be good if the government and law align themselves. I agree with that. I think we all agree with that. Okay, so the next question, again, I think we covered this, but very quickly, if someone had been sacked because there was no work, but because they anticipated that the work was going to fall off, can the employee then be re-employed and then furloughed?
Yes, as long as it's from the 28th of April onwards.
28th of February.
I'm sorry, February. Yeah, I'm already next month. Yeah.
I'm listening.
Yeah, I'm glad. Absolutely right. As long as it's from the 28th of February onwards.
Yeah. So there's some questions around hires, which we've already covered. There's also some questions around it being extended. And I think we know that you've already mentioned that we don't know, but most likely they should, because what would happen if they didn't? Temp employees on fixed term contracts, we've already covered that. Yes. Sorry, I'm kind of reading as we go, so bear with me.
Well, we're covering everything. That's good.
Yeah. Let's have a look. So we've covered that the 80% is taxable.
Yeah.
We've covered fixed term contracts that come to the end. When they come to the end, they can't be furloughed any further than that.
Yes.
We don't know when the portal is going to be available either. Right, let's have
no, the idea is we don't know. They're saying it's by the end of April.
They're saying the portal will be available by the end of April.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So people would have to be paid as normal and then potentially upload and claim back.
Correct. The scheme should be that we're paying them as normal and then reclaiming on that scheme 80% up to a cap of $2,500. The issue will be for the companies that have no money. Well, if they have no money, they have no money. They'll still try and reclaim, and if they can't reclaim, well, then presumably they'll be making redundancies or closing the business, and then if there's no money again, employees will need to claim from the government.
Yeah. Got you. Thank you. Tosh, we have one last question, which you may have already covered, but I'm going to read it out so we can make sure we're on top of things. So after the FTC, when it ends, an employee doesn't get coverage for furloughed, an end of contract can also be done because all projects are put on hold till the pandemic is over. Please advise in your video when you post it. Can you unpack that question for me? It's a little.
I'm trying to do that right now. We're reading it. So after the FTC, when it ends a fixed term contract, when it ends, an employee doesn't get coverage furloughed. It's the first question. So the issue is if it's genuinely a fixed term contract or not. Yeah. If it's a situation where they are from the 28th onwards and they are meet the criteria, then there's no reason they can't be furloughed. But obviously, if it's just was going to end anyway, and the primary reason was not the coronavirus scenario, well, then they shouldn't be, that they're not covered under the coronavirus job retention scheme. That's in the title, right? End of contract can also be done because all projects are put on hold till the pandemic is over. That would potentially also be a furlough scenario. But then, it's not necessarily really a fixed term arrangement necessarily. Again, it's going to be the devil in the detail. Each case is going to be fact sensitive, I suppose. But if you're asking me generally whether everything's on hold, well, that's the same as every other employee. If you're keeping them on the books, then they should then be furloughed.
Yeah.
That's it, I think. I mean, until the pandemic is over. Yes, so strictly speaking, yes, as long as they could show that they would have continued to be employed and their employment wouldn't have come to an end for some other reason, or they're not at work for some other reason, like maternity or sick leave or anything else like that, well, then they qualify as being furloughed. Okay. Does that answer the question?
That answers the questions that we didn't get covered off. I think we still will have more questions. And on that basis, I'm really pleased to hear that we are reconvening on Friday, the 3rd of April at 1 o'clock. Tosh, is that right?
That's right. So what's going to happen is this video is going to go out to everybody as our follow-up video answering all the questions that were presented to us.
Yeah.
We're also going to put it out there for people to pick the topics. Let's find out what actually matters to you. Look, we're genuinely trying to help. There's no personal gain here whatsoever from us. We just had lots of clients that were looking for help in this area, and we thought we would just share. There's so much information out there. We can just sort of filter it out, and we want experts like us to be able to put you in the right picture, right? So, what matters to you, I suppose, is it the self-employment scheme now?
Yeah.
What do you do after this is over? Or, I don't know, what questions can you suggest me so that they might want to ask?
There's such a broad range of working styles for people out there. There's, as you mentioned, there's the contract workers, there's the temporary workers, and I definitely think that more clarity and guidance around there. And I actually also think as time goes on, redundancies will become a bigger part of the landscape of what are we going to do and how are we going to do it. So I think those two areas definitely, I think there should be more clarity on. But we really look forward to everyone's feedback, because that will help us really tailor these sessions to what they're looking for and making sure we get the right information over.
I suppose my final message would be for people not to buy into the hysteria that's going on. I know it's crazy. It's not, you know, the death toll are increasing significantly. You know, please just exercise reasonable behaviours, stay indoors. I'm sure most people are, but that's the way we're going to stop it. You know, I don't know if you saw in the news yesterday, presume you did, is that we reached the 1,000 deaths mark now. So it's really, really important that we just follow whatever guidelines there are, both as employers, employees, human beings, and just kind of do the right thing but you know, we will continue to put this information out. Just tell us what you want us to talk to you about.
Thank you, Tosh. So thank you everyone for attending our Q&A sessions. We hope to see you on Friday the 3rd of April at 1 o'clock. Watch this space for more information on that, and in the meantime, stay safe. Thank you.
Bye for now. See you on Friday.
Bye all.